Story 1. The Drifter's Promise. I've never been one to settle, always chasing the next road, the next sky, something to keep my blood moving. Last summer, I took a job as a park ranger in eastern Oregon. Remote, rugged country, forests dense, with fir and cedar, rivers cutting through valleys like veins in the earth. The position was a dream, patrolling trails on foot or by truck, checking campsites for stragglers, living in a ranger cabin perched on a ridge, miles from the nearest town, surrounded by wilderness that swallowed sound and light. The cabin was basic: log walls weathered gray, a wood stove that smoked if you stoked it wrong, a single window facing a gravel track that wound down to the park gate, a radio on a shelf spitting static when the signal held. I moved in fast, unpacked my gear, hung a map on the wall, settled into a routine of solitude that felt like coming home after years of restless wandering. Days were simple: hiking loops through the trees, marking fallen branches, radioing in weather updates. Nights were quieter still, just the crackle of the fire and the wind sighing through the canopy outside. Tourists trickled through, hikers with backpacks, retirees in campers, kids chasing squirrels. But by late June, the crowds thinned, leaving me alone with the park, a kingdom of silence I'd claimed for myself. One evening, I was locking the ranger station, a squat shed near the entrance, maps curling at the edges, a desk cluttered with permits, when I saw him, leaning against a trail sign, pack slung loose over one shoulder, watching me with a faint, crooked smile. He was tall, lean but solid, beard patchy, coat frayed at the hems, standing there like he'd grown out of the dirt, eyes glinting in the fading gold of dusk. Lost? I asked. Kept it casual, hand on the station door, keys jangling as I turned to face him fully. Just passing through, he said, voice low, smooth, sliding out easy like he'd practiced it, stepping closer, boots crunching gravel, smile, stretching wider. Park's closed for the night. Town's 40 miles west if you need a ride, I replied. Nodded down the road, figuring he'd hitch out before dark settled in thick. He tilted his head, grin sharpening, teeth catching the last light. Mind if I camp here? No wheels and it's a hell of a walk. My gut twitched. Park rules were strict, no unauthorized stays, but he looked tired, soaked from a drizzle that had started an hour back, and I'd bent worse rules before. Stay near the gate, keep it clean, I said. Scribbled a permit. On a scrap, handed it over. Watched him tuck it in his coat with a slow nod. He set up quick. Small tent pitched under a cluster of pines. Fire sparking low, smoke curling up into the graying sky. Waved as I drove off in the truck, his silhouette sharp against the flames, a lone figure in the vast dark. Next morning he was gone. Tent folded, fire smothered, no litter, no trace. Like the forest had swallowed him whole overnight. I checked the site, kicked the ashes, scanned the trees, shrugged it off, went back to my rounds, the day unfolding in quiet, familiar patterns. A week later, it started. Found a note slipped under. My cabin door, folded tight, paper rough and yellowed, edges damp like it had been carried through rain. See you soon, it read. Handwriting jagged, ink smeared, no signature, no hint of who'd left it or when. I stepped outside. Flashlight beams slicing the dark, trees swaying in a breeze that carried the scent of wet earth. Nothing moved, no tracks, just the note burning a hole in my hand. Burned it, tossed it in the stove, watched the flames eat it. Told myself it was a hiker's joke. Some kid messing with the ranger for kicks. That night, I heard it. Footsteps, faint, crunching the gravel outside, circling the cabin slow, deliberate, like a predator pacing its cage. Grabbed my flashlight, swept the yard, beam trembling, caught a shadow darting behind a pine, too fast to pin, gone before I could blink. Park's closed. Who's there? I shouted, voice steady, hand hovering over the radio, thumb brushing the call button. No reply, just the wind picking up, rustling louder, drowning any answer. But my heart thudded hard, a rhythm I couldn't shake. Locked the door, checked. The window, saw nothing but black. Slept with my hunting knife under the pillow, blade cool against my palm. A thin comfort in the dark. Next day, another note, wedged in the station's lock when I got there. Missed you last night. Same scrawl, same stain, paper crinkling as I pulled it free. I radioed base, kept my tone flat, reported it. Chief, a gruff woman named Ellis, said it's probably teens, but promised a patrol if it escalated. Night came, footsteps again, closer, brushing the cabin walls. Then a knock, light, almost playful, tapping the door like a friend dropping by. "Who's out there?" I yelled. Knife in one hand, flashlight in the other. Beam hit the window, caught a grin, wide and sharp, then nothing, shadow melting away. Stayed awake, lights blazing, radio hissing static. Dawn broke, silence returned. But a third note waited on the porch, rocking in the breeze. "Getting warmer," it said, paper soggy, smelling of pine and sweat, ink bleeding into the folds like it had been written in a hurry. I drove to town, found the sheriff at his office. A squat building by the highway, showed him the notes, watched his jaw tighten as he read. "Drifters pass through. Could be one playing games," he said. "Promised to check records, send a car, but the park's too big, too wild to comb." Back at the cabin, I rigged traps, tripwires with tin cans, branches set to snap, hoping to catch him, scare him off, anything to break the pattern. Midnight, cans clattered, sharp and loud. I bolted up, knife ready. Beam swept the yard, empty, wires sliced, clean, cans scattered like toys. Another note, taped to the window, inches from where I'd slept. "Nice try." Grinning face scratched beside it. Crude but unmistakable. Mocking me. Called base again. Ellis sent a deputy, a lanky kid named Tate, skeptical but thorough. Searched. Found boot prints, wide and deep, trailing into the trees. Could be anyone. Hunters, hikers, he said. Shrugged. Gave me a card with his number. Drove off as dusk bled into night. Next night, no steps, just silence, thick and heavy. Then a laugh, low and rolling, seeping through the walls from outside the door. Swung it open. Nothing but dark, trees swaying. Note. Fluttered down, pinned by a stone. Tomorrow. Ink dark, fresh, dripping wet. Panic hit, packed a bag. Slept in the truck, engine idling. Headlights carving a path through the woods, watching for movement. Dawn. Checked the cabin. Found chaos. Chair smashed. Stove dented. Knife gone from under my pillow. Walls scratched deep with "soon" in. Ragged lines. Sheriff came. Set a watch. 2 deputies camped out. Caught him 3 nights later, sneaking up. Grin still plastered on. Eyes wild in the flashlight's glare. He was a nobody. Drifter, rap sheet long, knife in his pack, blade crusted red. Said he liked hunting folks who think they're safe. Locked him up, trials set for next month. But last week, a note hit my new place, 50 miles south, slipped under the door. "Miss me?" Same scrawl, same stain. I hear footsteps now. Soft, circling my house at night, promising he's free, promising he's close. They say he's still in jail. Sheriff swears it, shows me logs. But I see that grin in every shadow, hear that laugh in every gust, feel those eyes on me, waiting for the next hunt to begin. I don't sleep much. Keep the lights on, knife closer, radio loud. But the notes keep coming, one every few days, each one shorter, sharper, hungrier. Almost time. That's the latest, left last night. Paper pinned with a nail, dripping red at the edges, staining my porch. I've got a gun now, loaded, by the bed. But the footsteps don't stop. The laugh doesn't fade. And I know he's out there, keeping his promise, counting down to me. Story 2. The Cipher in the Fog. I've always been drawn to the sea. Its moods, its secrets, the way it can hide anything if it wants to. Last winter I moved to a coastal village in Northern California. Tiny place, 600 folks, houses clinging. To rocky cliffs, fog drifting in off the Pacific like a shroud every night. I'd just quit a soul-crushing office job. Data entry, fluorescent lights. Took a position at the town museum. A weathered barn of a building packed with old fishing gear, ship logs, and photos of storms nobody remembered. The work was mellow. Cataloging artifacts, dusting displays, guiding the odd tourist through tales of wrecks and whales, hours slipping by with the rhythm of waves crashing below. First few months were calm, gulls wheeling overhead, fishermen swapping stories at the pier, my rental cottage a cozy box with salt-streaked windows and a fireplace that smoked when the wind turned. Then the letters came, slid into the museum's drop box. No envelope, just folded sheets, typed in stark mechanical rows, like they'd been punched out on an ancient press. First one was brief. Night reveals. No signature, paper crisp, smelling faintly of seaweed and machine oil, edges brittle, from damp. I thought prank, local kids, bored in the off-season, pinned it to the wall by my desk, showed it to Marla, the curator, who smirked and called it creative. Next night, another. 6 will sink. Same type, same cold precision, slipped in after I'd locked the doors, Dropbox empty when I'd checked it close. Stepped outside. Fog thick as soup, swallowing the street. Nobody around. Just the low moan of a buoy rocking offshore. Told the sheriff, big guy, ex-logger, hands like slabs. He glanced at it, said it's nothing serious, filed it away with a grunt. Third letter dropped. Watch the cliffs. Longer, words knotted, numbers, scratched along the sides. A cipher I couldn't untangle at first. Stayed late. Perched by the museum window. Fog smearing the glass. Cliffs a jagged shadow in the haze. Nothing moved, but my chest tightened, breath fogging the pain. Next morning, a crabber went missing. Boat washed up, nets slashed, blood streaking the helm. No trace of him in the water. Town stirred. Fear rippled. Talk of accidents shifting to whispers of worse. Fourth letter hit. 1 lost. Numbers circling a rough sketch of the harbor. I puzzled it. Coordinates. Sloppy but clear. Pointed to the old lighthouse, abandoned, crumbling on a bluff above the sea. Showed the sheriff. He frowned, called it a stretch, sent a deputy anyway, who came back with dust and a shrug, no leads. Fifth letter. 2 will. Tumble. Slipped in midday, Dropbox clanging. I bolted out, fog choking the air, saw a shape melt into the mist, too quick to follow. That night, a pair vanished. Dockhand and his girlfriend, car empty by the shore, keys in the ignition, blood pooling dark on the seats. Sheriff got grim, called in help, grilled me. I handed over the letters, watched his eyes narrow, fingers drumming the desk. 6th came. 3 unlocks, map tighter, lighthouse again. I went, flashlight flickering, fog so dense it clung to my skin like wet hands. Footsteps rang. Someone inside, pacing the tower spiral. Beam caught. A figure, hooded, turning slow, gone when I blinked. Ran, phoned the sheriff, voice shaking. He shut the town down. Boats docked. Roads blocked. Fear settled like damp in our bones. 7th letter. 4 completes. Numbers boxed my street. I stayed in, blinds down, shotgun from my dad's old hunting days loaded by the couch. Knocking, soft, insistent. I peeked, saw him. Tall, still, fog swirling around, eyes gleaming under a hood like wet stones. Fired, window shattered, shot wild. He laughed, low and jagged. Vanished as sirens wailed, deputies closing in fast. Cops hunted, found a shack, typewriter, blood-soaked rags, caught him weeks later. Grinning, silent, fog his shield and ally. He'd killed before. Vagrant, coded games his thrill. Said he loved the fog, the chase, the way it muffled screams. Town's hushed now, but last night, fog rolled thick and a letter hit my mailbox. Miss, the hunt? Same type, same chill, promising more. I don't leave after dusk, keep the gun near, doors bolted. But the fog carries his laugh, soft and steady, every time it creeps in. They swear he's caged. Sheriff shows me records, cell photos, but the letters stack up, each one colder, keener, nearer. 6 is best. That's the latest, typed fresh. Left this morning, paper wet with mist, numbers circling my cottage once more. I hear him now, footsteps in the fog, pacing outside, a rhythm I can't escape, counting down to whatever he's planned next. Story 3. The Butcher's Guest. I've always thrived in cities. Love the bustle, the anonymity, the way you can blend into the swarm and disappear. Last summer, I moved to Detroit. New job, freelance coder, scored a cheap apartment in a rundown district near the river, all concrete and rust. The building was ancient, 7 floors, stairs sagging, halls lit by buzzing fluorescents, air thick with fryer grease and old tobacco from the dive below. My place was small, 5th floor, 1 bedroom, kitchen with a fridge that rattled like a dying engine, windows shaking when semis roared past. I liked it. Close to gigs, rent dirt cheap. Neighbors aloof, just grunts in passing, no forced chit-chat to navigate. First weeks were fine. Set up my laptop, worked late, found a deli with sandwiches that hit the spot, started feeling like I belonged. Then I met him, guy next door, 5D, stocky, pale, always in a grimy shirt, grinning too wide when we crossed paths at the mailboxes. "Hey neighbor," he'd say, voice warm, eyes sticking too long. Offered me a pop once, said he liked new blood around. I played nice, took it, small-talked, stiff but polite. He seemed lonely, quirky, just a guy passing time in a dead-end life. A month in, the smell started. Faint at first, sour, seeping from his door, curling into the hall like a bad dream you can't shake. "Cooking," he said when I asked, grinned. Bigger, shrugged it off. "Making stew, want some?" I said no. Smell grew, rotten, meaty, complained to the landlord, a chain-smoking guy with a cough, got a nod and nothing else. One night I heard it, thumping, low, from 5D, steady, late, when the building went quiet, a dull chop echoing through the thin walls. Peeked out, light leaked under his door, shadows twitching. Smell slammed me, rancid, shoving me back with a choke. Next day, he knocked, handed me a jar. "Homemade sauce," he said, grinned, eyes glinting, jar warm and slick in my hands. Tossed it, stank wrong, oily. Heard more, thumps that night, louder, wetter, joined by a scrape like a blade on bone. Weeks passed, tenants started vanishing, guy from 4B, lady in 6C, boxes piled up, no movers, no farewells. Smell choked the hall, air heavy, thick. Landlord said they'd bailed on rent, but I'd seen no one pack, no trucks roll out. One night he invited me. "Dinner tomorrow," he said, stood too close, grin splitting his face, hands stained dark at the nails. I declined, locked my door, heard him hum outside, low and slow, pacing the hall like a restless shadow. Thumping stopped. Silence worse, then a scream, sharp, snuffed fast. 5D's door creaked open, shut, heavy, and final. Called cops. Smell unbearable, fear clawing. They knocked, got no answer, left with a promise to check back. Next night, he pounded. "Join me," he said, voice thick, eager. Jar clinked the floor, rolling slow against my door. Peeked. Blood under his nails, shirt splattered red. Slammed the bolt, dialed 911, hands shaking so hard I fumbled the call. Cops raided. Found him, calm. Kitchen a bloodbath. Bodies in the fridge, chopped neat. Jars lined up like prizes on a shelf. He'd lured them, neighbors, drifters, cooked them, grinned at me in cuffs, said I'd have been tender. Moved out. New city, new life. But last week a jar hit my doorstep. No note, just that smell, thick and alive again. I don't answer knocks, keep the blinds shut, knife by the bed. But the thumping's back, faint, under my floor, calling me closer. They say he's locked away. Cops swear it, show me files. But the smell follows, the hum echoes, and I know he's not done with me yet. Story 4, The Blade in the Alley. I've scraped by with odd jobs my whole life. Factories, bars, anywhere that pays fast and doesn't dig into your history. Last fall, I took a bouncer job in Baltimore. Dive bar, east side, brick walls stained, with decades of smoke, windows fogged with grease and despair. The place was raw, jukebox croaking, floors sticky with spilled liquor, crowd loud and rough, fists swinging over spilled drinks or bad bets. I liked it. Steady work, late hours, kept me busy after a breakup that left me broke and hollow, needing the chaos to drown out the quiet. The bar sat on a block of empty lots, alleys snaking behind, dark and narrow, trash piling up in corners, wind rattling cans against the walls. First month was smooth. Broke up scuffles, tossed drunks out, locked up at 2 a.m., walked home under streetlights flickering weak and yellow. Then the murders hit. Guy found in the alley, head gone, torso split wide, dumped by the back door like discarded meat. Cops came, tape up, lights, flashing, asked me questions, took my statement. I'd locked up, seen nothing, just another shift. Next week, another, woman, same alley, same cuts, headless, blood pooling black, soaking the gravel by the dumpster. Rumors spread, killer loose, stalking stragglers. Bar emptied early, regulars muttering, eyes darting to the shadows outside. I stayed late, wiping counters, counting tips. Heard it one night. Footsteps. Slow, scraping the alley wall. A faint drag of metal on brick. Looked out. Shadow moved, tall, hunched. Steel glinted. A blade, broad and cruel, catching the bar's red neon glow. Locked the back, heart pounding, called cops, voice low. They patrolled, found nothing, said it's nerves. Late nights playing tricks. Third body dropped. Regular, guy I'd bounced. Head gone, left by the entrance. Blood still warm when I flipped the sign to open. Cops watched me, grilled me hard, suspicious. I swore I'd just worked. No blood. On me, hands clean as they'd been all night. Footsteps came nightly, scraping, pacing. Then a note, slipped under the bar door. You're next. Ink black, paper torn at the edges. Showed the owner. He fired me, scared. Cops took the note. Set a trap, caught nothing. Killer slipping through like smoke. I walked home. Alleys dark, blades echo in my ears. Saw him last week, waiting, grinning, cutting the night with steel. Eyes locked on me. Moved cities, new gig, new streets. But the scraping follows, soft behind me, promising the blade's still out there, still hungry. I don't linger outside. Keep the lights on, door locked, but the footsteps pace, the metal drags. and I know he's close, always close. Story 5, The Jazzman's Call. I've been obsessed with music my whole life, jazz especially, the way it weaves chaos into beauty, wild and untamed, like a pulse you can't control. Last summer, I moved to Nashville, took a job as a sound tech, at a dive club downtown, streets buzzing with twang and brass, air thick with heat and the promise of late-night riffs. The gig was perfect. Mixing boards, tweaking mics, living in a rented shotgun house a few blocks off Broadway, its sagging porch and peeling paint a small price for being close to the sound. The house was narrow, wood floors creaking, walls thin, a single window facing an alley where streetlights barely reached, an old radio on the counter that hissed when I tuned it to local stations. I settled in quick, unpacked my gear, hung posters of Miles and Coltrane, fell into a rhythm of late shifts and quiet mornings, the city's heartbeat syncing with mine. Days were busy, setting up for bands, testing levels, dodging drunks who stumbled too close to the stage. Nights were alive, jazz flowing free, horns cutting the smoky air like knives through silk. The club drew a mix, tourists in cowboy hats, locals with stories etched in their faces, musicians chasing gigs. But by July, the crowd steadied, and I found my place in the noise, a cog in the machine of sound. One night, I was breaking down after a set, coiling cables, wiping sweat from the board, when I saw him, leaning by the back exit, sax case at his feet, watching me with a slow, easy grin. He was lanky, tall, wiry, hair slicked back, jacket patched at the elbows, standing there like he owned the shadows, eyes glinting under the flickering exit sign. Late set? I asked, kept it light, hands on the cables, figuring he was a player waiting for a ride or a tip. Just listening, he said. Voice smooth, low, rolling out like a melody. Stepping closer, boots scuffing the floor, grin widening slow. Clubs closed. Next show's tomorrow, I replied. Nodded to the door, expecting him to head out into the humid night. He tilted his head, smile sharpening, teeth catching the dim light. Mind if I hang around? Got no place till dawn. My gut pinged. Club rules said no loiterers, but he looked harmless, tired, just another stray musician, and I'd let worse slide before. Stay out back, don't mess with the gear, I said, waved him off, watched him nod, sax case swinging as he slipped outside. He lingered, sat by the alley, case open, playing soft low notes that drifted through the cracked door, waved as I locked up, his silhouette sharp against the brick, a lone figure in the dark. Next shift, he was gone. No case, no trace, alley empty, like the night had swallowed him whole before the sun came up. I checked the spot, kicked a cigarette butt, scanned the shadows, shrugged it off, went back to work, the day rolling on in its usual grind. A week later, it began. Found a note taped to my front door, folded tight, paper crisp and yellowed, edges frayed like it had been torn from something. Old. Play for me, it read, handwriting sharp, ink dark, no name, no clue who'd left it or how they'd known where I lived. Stepped onto the porch, flashlight beam cutting the alley, houses quiet in the pre-dawn hush. Nothing stirred, no footprints, just the note cold in my hand. Tossed it, crumpled it into the trash. Told myself it was a fan, some drunk from the club, a weird thank you for the sound. That night, I heard it. Notes. Faint, drifting from the alley, a sax whining low and slow, circling my house like a ghost tune. Grabbed my flashlight, swept the beam, caught a shadow slipping behind a dumpster, too quick to chase, gone before I could focus. Club's that. "Way, who's out there?" I shouted. Voice firm, hand on the doorknob, ready to bolt it shut. No answer, just the wind picking up, rustling trash, drowning the sound. But my pulse kicked up, steady and hard, locked up, checked the window, Saw nothing but dark. Slept. With a kitchen knife by the bed, blade glinting in the streetlight's glow. Next day, another note, stuck to the club's back door when I got in. Swing or die. Same scrawl, same ink, paper crinkling as I peeled it free. I called the manager, kept it cool, showed it. Jake, a grizzled guy with a limp, said it's probably a prank, but promised to watch the alley. Night fell, notes again, closer, threading through. The walls, then a knock, soft, deliberate, tapping my door like a beat. "Who's there?" I yelled, knife in hand, flashlight aimed. Beam hit the window, caught a grin, sharp and wide, then nothing, shadow fading fast. Stayed up, lights, on, radio buzzing. Dawn broke, quiet returned, but a third note waited on the porch, fluttering in the breeze. "Keep the rhythm," it said, paper damp, smelling of sweat and metal, ink bleeding into the creases like it had been rushed. I drove to the precinct, found a cop at the desk, a tired woman named Ruiz, showed her the notes, watched her brow furrow as she read. "Musicians get weird fans. Could be one," she said. "Promised to check, send a car, but the city's too loud, too big to pin down." Back home, I set traps, string with bells, cans rigged to clatter, hoping to catch him, scare him off, break the creeping dread. Midnight. Bells rang, shrill and sudden. I jolted up, knife ready. Beam swept the alley, empty, string cut clean, cans rolling loose. Another note, taped to the window, inches from my bed. Nice beat. Grinning face scratched beside it. Rough but clear, taunting me. Called Jake again. He sent a bouncer, a beefy guy named Tony, skeptical but solid. Searched, found shoe prints, scuffed, leading into the dark. Could be anyone. Street kids, junkies, he said. Shrugged. Gave. Me his cell. Left as dawn painted the sky gray. Next night, no notes. Just silence. Heavy, pressing. Then a riff, low and wild. Sax wailing outside my door, sharp and close. Swung it open. Nothing but alley shadows. Air thick. Note fluttered. Down pinned by a pebble. Tomorrow, ink wet, fresh, dripping black. Panic clawed. Packed a bag, slept at the club, board humming, stage lights dim, watching the exits for movement. Dawn, checked the house, found ruin, table flipped, radio smashed, knife gone, walls carved with swing in, jagged strokes. Cops came, set a watch, 2 uniforms posted. Caught him 3 nights later, creeping up, grin still fixed, eyes burning in the beam. He was a ghost, drifter, priors for assault, sacks in his bag, blade tucked inside. Said he loved making folks play or pay. Locked him up, trials pending. But last week, a note hit my new apartment, 60 miles north, slipped under the frame. Miss the tune? Same scrawl, same ink. I hear jazz now, soft, circling my place at night, promising he's back, promising a song. They say he's caged. Cops swear it, show me logs. But I see that grin in every flicker, hear that sax in every breeze, feel those notes pulling me in. I don't sleep deep, keep the lights on, knife sharper, windows barred. But the notes keep dropping, one every few nights, each one darker, hungrier. Time to swing. That's the latest. Left last night. Paper pinned with a nail, dripping red at the edges, staining my floor. I've got a gun now, loaded, by the couch. But the jazz doesn't stop, the rhythm builds, and I know he's out there, calling me to dance or die.